All right, I'm here with Kim Sullivan, principal at Gensler, which is one of the world's leading architecture firms and a firm that we partner with frequently to design interior office space for our clients. Kim, I've been keeping these Q&As to 5 questions, which seems to align with most people's attention span. But in preparing for this conversation, it's really been a challenge to restrain myself, as I know you and I could talk for hours about topics related to design, especially given the circumstances where the very essence of human interaction and communication is being tested and restricted in ways we've never experienced or saw coming, for that matter. And we're all participating in the largest work from home experiment ever conducted, from CEOs down to first years. And while it's unfortunate it has to be under these conditions, the insight that can be gained from this situation will be incredibly valuable and could shape the way people work and view office space going forward, or at least in the near term. So before I go any further, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you, John, and thanks for the invitation to be a part of this conversation today. As you said, there's been a lot of change in a very short period of time, so it's just a privilege to have the conversation with you. So yes, I'm a principal at Gensler, and I actually have the privilege of co-leading one of our workplace studios. So I have insights into headquarters and professional service firms, technology companies, etc. So we've been having some very interesting conversations, as you can imagine, over the last few weeks.
So the number one question I'm receiving from everyone, friends, family, clients, is, will companies require less office space or any office space at all after realizing they're capable from working from home, especially given the interactive technologies that are out there, such as this very Zoom call? But before we discuss what the workplace could be changing to, let's discuss what it could be changing from. So in other words, what is the current state of the workplace and the broad design trends that you have been seeing leading up to 2020?
Yeah, I'm actually glad we're starting with, where we're coming from, because over the last, 3 or 4 years, it's been really interesting. There hasn't been a one size fits all. And I think it's important to state that, where we are today is still relatively new in this new normal. So, these opinions or ideas are just my insights. I know there's still a lot of time ahead of us to understand what really will be changing and what will be adapting. But I think when we look just to, a few months ago, Gensler actually just published our 2020 workplace research. And a couple of highlights out of that are interesting is that although there's still a lot of choice in how people work, whether it's at home, remote, or in the office, people still choose and wanted to be in the office because of culture. It could be a vibrant place to work and collaborate. And although we're now in this new state of virtual work, I think we've been adapting to this different way of working for some time. We've all been using our devices, and work wasn't necessarily where you go anymore. It's just what you do anytime during the day, night, or weekends. So I think from a positive perspective, we've already been adapting to this new reality for some time.
So everyone seems to have an opinion on how the future of the workplace will be impacted. Some think this will have an enormous effect where companies encourage working from home and people are hyper aware of their personal space and their physical interaction. And others think this may have the opposite effect, who realize how critical the office space is for productivity, mentorship, interaction, and collaboration, which simply cannot be done in silos at home. What is your take on this, and what has been the response so far from your clients and your colleagues?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think especially in the past week, we've had various conversations with professional service firms and other technology companies that we've been working with. And I think it's interesting, the first 1 or 2 weeks, they were like, wow, this is great. I can focus, I'm not interrupted. I'm able to use all these tools and connect. But I think now in week 3 and going into week 4, people are realizing the impact of mentorship, having that colleague interaction, just the overall, I think daily, I would say colleague to colleague brainstorming that happens in a spontaneous way is a little bit more challenging. So I think the notion of office space and workspace is still something people will want and need. But the overarching concepts of choice and flexibility, I think, are really going to be the driving forces coming out of this, that people are just going to want to have more options rather than just being, I have to go to the office or not.
So as new buildings are developed and more technologies are adopted in the workplace, companies have often taken less square footage whenever they've had the opportunity to do so. Do you think the effects of this virus will have companies reevaluating personal space by giving them more room in order to maintain a healthy distance from one another? Or will companies still prioritize efficiency in order to keep costs down? You know, what's the healthy balance there?
I think it's a little too soon to tell, right? There's, so many ideas and challenges that we're going to be like working through. But from the conversations we've been having with our clients, the research that we've been doing, and just the conversations we're having internally, we do find that efficiency is still going to be important, right? People always want to be more effective with how they're using space, how they're leveraging both technology and reducing, some areas that are just underutilized. So I think that's always going to be an important driver. But again, as I mentioned before, I think the workplace is still going to be a destination where people are going to thrive and be excited to go to, but it's going to be a lot more flexible, and it's going to need to adapt to more of these virtual meetings, and having maybe the densities on a day-to-day basis are going to adapt a bit more. So we're going to have work environments that are more nimble. And we also think that, especially on the first few days of people going back to work, it's not going to be everyone back in their seats on day one. There's probably going to be waves of different leaders and people going back in. So from my perspective, I think that almost could be a pilot to see what's working and what isn't working, and not to jump to conclusions, but to really use this as an opportunity to ask some great questions, to get feedback, and for us to, leverage this time to be as nimble and flexible as possible.
So speaking of feedback, Gensler is known for having tons of data on how people work and what trends are being implemented in the workplace. In what ways are you tapping into your clients to gain critical feedback during this time in order to see how remote working is impacting culture, wellness, and productivity?
Yeah, I'm actually so glad you said that. Just week one, when we were all working from home, our Gensler Research Institute started collecting questions and have put together a questionnaire to actually capture that work from home feedback. So we've already been sharing that survey with many of our clients. Some of that data is going to be coming in very soon. So we're going to get real-time insights into what is working and what isn't, and how can, I think in any crisis, there's an opportunity. And we're going to find maybe some new ways of working together, connecting with our clients, and, hopefully being a lot more, I would say, communicative. And I think even this conversation, it's really nice because people are seeing into each other's homes and worlds, and it's a bit more casual, but very effective. So I think there's already some lessons learned here that we're gleaning.
Yeah, speaking of hearing into homes, hopefully you can't hear my 2-year-old screaming downstairs. It's not going through the speakers right now, but
No, we love it.
One thing that this has illuminated is the importance of being adaptable, because things can change in an instant. And we're accustomed to seeing changes occur more slowly in the workplace as new technologies emerge and trends shift. But lots can change over a 5, 10, and 15-year period, which is usually the length of a term that tenants commit to when signing a new lease. So how do you ensure that space that you are designing is adaptable over such a long period of time, despite our surroundings changing rapidly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, John, I know we've had the privilege of working together on projects, and that question has been asked for a while now. I think the notion of how a space can evolve with the company or the industry as the industry changes, as culture evolves, et cetera, has always been at the forefront of what we're trying to do. And as you said, technology has really been a catalyst in that regard. I think maybe just a lesson learned and case story from my perspective. I know within the Gensler DC office, we actually about 6 months ago started to adopt some strategies because we wanted to almost be our own test bed of these ideas to see what's working, what's not working. And so we actually went to, we called it a dynamic environment where 50% of our team members were in unassigned seats. And we've learned so much from that in terms of how that impacts effectiveness, choice, and how people work, and just how the spaces around you and the technology that supports you needs to be integrated. And so to answer your question, I think the fact that workspaces really need to look at how they can flex and evolve over time. And the technology is definitely key. I think every collaborative room needs some sort of display or a way to share content. And I think furniture that is a little bit more flexible and ergonomic just allows people to adapt their needs and their team environments more quickly, rather than it just being kind of hard wall environments.
Well, that was, I'm proud of myself. I kept it to 5 questions. That was 5, but I'll throw in a bonus question now as well, which are kind of, what are some of the final tips you can recommend to people who are still finding it challenging to adjust to working from home, that perhaps may be unable to physically interact with colleagues as they once did? How are you guiding your clients through this period?
Yeah, that is definitely top of mind, because that connection with people, I think that's what we all crave right now more than anything, and to have purpose. It's interesting, the World Health Organization has said that, wellness and health is about, social engagement, physical, mental, it's all of that. And for us to be having these touch points with each other, I know our teams have been having 15-minute stand-ups, digital, of course, or virtual, having, the happy hours. But I think people also just crave, the conversation and seeing each other. And so making that a point every day to be reaching out, and just, sharing stories and connecting, has definitely been something our teams and the relationships with our clients have been really inspiring, because people, just amazing how resilient everyone is. I think sometimes people look at these opportunities and really take hold of them and can leverage their relationships and bring it to a different platform. So we've definitely been trying to stay connected on a more regular basis and leveraging all these tools. So I think this will be one of those things that stays with us for a while.
I very much agree. And these are all great insights. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Again, I know we could expand this and do another 20 questions, but for purposes of time, I'll end there. And again, thank you to you and your team for all the information and the studies and the research that you're putting out there. And I'll continue to use you as a resource as things proceed.
Absolutely. And thank you. And thank you for having these conversations. It's been, really insightful for us too. So thanks for taking the lead on that.
My pleasure. All right, Kim, take care.
All right, John. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.